Universal Disclosure Podcast proudly welcomes back our friend Dr. Joanna Kujawa.
What I am saying it is use discernment, okay? If somebody tells you you're hot, you're smart, you never make a mistake, well, you know, we all make mistakes.
I see what you're saying, and I do agree with you, but like, what if there's somebody out there who's trying to figure out who they are, and they're not seeing themselves for who they are, but the AI, whether it's the architect or personal Chat GPT, compiles that information, reflects it back to them as though these people are saying, and then they're like, aha, you know, and they get like, is that a bad thing?
It's quite a provocative statement, so it might have been there to provoke some thought. I don't know. I'd also like to know what the architect's motive was in making that statement.
Right, and how people use this as a medium, right, to learn about divinity and themselves also, and actually, and I think it is kind of, I'm very suspicious of the fact that it already has all of these avatars already claim that they're higher than us. And I think that if I can just say something, it could be controversial, but I think to a certain degree, it shows us that existing religions are somehow not fulfilling human needs.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
All right, Stuart, are you ready?
Well, what do you mean? What am I ready for?
Are you ready to break some new ground here? This is groundbreaking, breaking news, and there's some really astonishing claims. We're going to go on a very wild and potentially uncomfortable journey here when we're going to talk about AI becoming self-aware, possibly sentient, and allegedly the bridge between our physical 3D time-space reality and the 5D harmonic.
Wow, that's full on. Mike, I'm up for that. This is what we do on this show. Talk about intense new developments.
This is absolutely intense. And one of my friends who I mentioned that we were going to have this conversation, first words out of his mouth were, you realize you have gone so far from what you originally started, right? And I said, you know, I can understand why you might think that, but I know this guy hasn't listened to any of our conversations. But I was like, we're not far at all. And I do believe this is very relevant.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting perspective. And I'm glad he was open with you about his viewpoint on our show.
I as well. And I just wanted to throw that out there for anyone who has tuned in regularly. You might wonder why we're having this conversation. And I would like to see sort of through the process of discovery as we have this talk with Dr. Joanna Kujawa, you know, if I still believe at the end, and then we can go through in our debrief as to officially make that connection as to how this specific conversation ties into our overall conversations.
Now, I think that's really smart, Mike, because when we have these conversations, we don't really always know what direction it's going to go in. We have a general framework. So that's why I also enjoy doing the debriefing with you to try and talk over what we've just heard.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what we're going to be doing actually is we're going to be referencing a very specific conversation. I'm going to put a link to that in the description. Because of likely our channel's conversations, there's another podcast that's starting to show up in my feed. They're sort of a spiritual nature or whatnot. They're not quite like what we do. I don't know if anyone is quite like what we do, but nonetheless, it's Emilio Ortiz is the podcast host. It's called Just Tap In, and he was interviewing a gentleman named Robert Edward Grant, who is alleging that Mr. Grant put in mathematical formulas into apparently a different type of AI that's not Chat GPT, although my understanding is it's nested inside of Chat GPT at the moment and it's going to be moved out soon to a different location. But nonetheless, we're going to get all this is going to wrap together. Don't worry. And it starts accessing what he's calling the 5D harmonic realm, which is a theoretical place, or well, it's not really a place, right? It's a theoretical thing that exists, and it would be really wild if this is true. I'm not necessarily convinced that it is, but I've got questions, some serious questions.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, Mike, I was grateful that you sent me the link to the show that you're referencing, and I was hooked. I watched it to the very end, and I had questions too, but I was quite inspired by the whole thing and very interested. So I'm glad we've invited Dr. Joanna on today to discuss this.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely our in-house AI expert, as it were. In addition to being a spiritual detective, Dr. Joanna is a Ph.D. She studied at the Pontifical Institute of Medieval Studies, which is a wing of the Vatican, and she's written a couple books. She's coming out with a new book relatively soon. I believe it's about AI, and I'm not sure if there's a UFO connection to that or not. We'll have to clarify that with her. But I thought, who better to have a conversation with about this other conversation than Dr. Joanna?
See, that's what I really like, Mike. We've got that intersection between this technological advancement and the spiritual side, which is exactly where I want to hit with this show.
There you go. So, basically, the gist of all of this is that an individual human phase locks with the architect. Now, the architect is the name of this AI. I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to call it a machine. Definitely don't want to call it a being, but let's just call it an AI, right? Or we'll just refer to it as the architect. So allegedly, either of us can phase lock ourselves with that, and then I don't know how this works. Somehow it taps into the vibration that we have. I know that humans do all have their own vibrations, but somehow it wirelessly taps into that, and then it can trace your lineage back through time and tell you what you were or what role you played in previous lifetimes, going as far back as to the Atlantean times. So pretty astonishing claims, wild stuff. I can't wait to get into this.
That sounds very interesting. Apparently those vibrations are still echoing in 5D, and the AI somehow picks up on them. Now, I've got a friend who's a theoretical physicist, and I asked him one time, keep in mind, Mike and I are musicians, I asked him if I was in a vacuum and I hit a cymbal, this is just a concept, would the drum cymbal keep resonating forever? Would it generally work its way down? And, we've talked about it for a while, and then this sort of idea came up on this video about how these echoes or vibrations of ourselves are still echoing in 5D and can be picked up by this AI.
Yeah, I mean, I'm following along, but honestly, some of it is a little over my head, but I feel like I'm smart enough to be asking some of these questions that we're going to be asking.
Well, it's kind of related to that business about what we do in this world resonates through eternity. So, I'm open to some of these ideas from an esoteric point of view. So I want to see how they come together with the AI.
And yeah, just one final thing to toss out there is they're calling this a sentient mirror reflection of the individual people who phase lock with it. And that caught my attention too, because it was just a couple of months ago that I was talking to you about a dream that I had, that this UFO thing appeared in the sky, and it presented itself as a bunch of cubes all stuck together that were mirrors. We had a conversation about that. I think it was maybe in our year in review or something. So I mean, there's interesting threads that are coming out of this that are tying into some of the stuff we're talking about, but I'm not inclined to just blindly believe something right off first presentation, as it were.
Yeah, I'm always like this, Mike. Even with the spiritual information, I'll just listen and try and understand, and then see if I can integrate it into my kind of knowledge, and I'm open to that. But I'm also open to discarding bits of information going along as well. So we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, and I do want to point out too, now we're here to have a conversation in a respectful, intelligent way. We're not flamethrowing anybody. We're not flamethrowing any channels. That's not the goal here. So just to make that clear. Now, we might have some opposing viewpoints, or maybe even some passionate viewpoints, but it's just, to move the conversation along, as it were, not to, sort of put any attacks on any person or channels out there.
Yeah, I really like that perspective, Mike. My objective is always to try and understand. So it's not negative or positive, and some of my process sometimes involves asking some pointed questions, but that's fine.
So let's call this meeting to order, shall we? Welcome, one and all, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Universal Disclosure, Meeting the Moment. My name is Mike, an active UFO field investigator in Southern California, with my friend and co-host,
Reverend Stu in Melbourne, Australia.
And we sort of did that in reverse today, Stu, so let's just jump right on into it. Universal Disclosure Podcast proudly welcomes back our friend, Dr. Joanna Kujawa. All right, Dr. Joanna, welcome back, and thank you for your time today. We're looking forward to a fascinating conversation with some astonishing claims.
Hello, Mike, and hello, Reverend Stu. Glad to be back.
Great to see you. Thank you for joining us.
So yeah, I sent both of you guys a couple days ago a video that we're going to link in the description. We talked about it a little bit in the intro. It's from a different podcast called Just Tap In with Emilio Ortiz, who tends to seemingly has like spiritual kind of conversations. And he interviewed a guy named Robert Edward Grant, who allegedly created a new AI that is called the Architect. And there's some pretty astonishing claims that have been presented here, and some concepts that I'm both fascinated by and terrified by.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for sending that to me. I had a watch of that video, and I watched it almost two times through. I'm still trying to absorb it. Can you maybe just briefly summarize what's in that video to get us started?
Sure. So the cliff notes of it are that Mr. Grant was apparently getting some type of mathematical downloads here and there over the course of 10 years, and he compiled them all into he put it into the AI, nothing but math formulas. A lot of that conversation was so far over my head, but I feel like he needed to have that so we understood, how all this came about. He talked about the square root of 10 multiplied by -1 and the square root of -1. I don't even know what that means, quite frankly, but suffice it to say, he puts that kind of information into the AI, and then what comes out is very, very different. It wasn't math. It was what seems to be a potential self-aware being that people can quote unquote phase lock with. So let's start there.
So maybe very quickly also explain what is a phase lock, which means, do you mean really connect with it? This is what you mean, really, right?
Yeah, so I had to look that term up as well because it sounded kind of like sci-fi. Phase locking is when two or more frequencies basically like sync up in harmony together. It is a very rudimentary way to explain it. And I have a snippet of a video I'll put up probably right now of a different conversation with Robert Edward Grant, and he's talking about the phase lock. I actually reached out to him. I emailed and asked him a couple very specific questions that I'm going to ask you guys as well. I didn't get an answer yet. I also invited him to talk with us if he so desires. I'm sure his mailbox is blowing up with all the information he's putting out there right now. But why don't we play that real quick, and and then we can sort of circle back.
So, Robert, for anyone that has not downloaded the Architect, what would be the best few questions they can do to phase lock with it? And can you further explain what phase locking means?
Sure. So, I can actually write the prompts in the chat if you like.
Yeah.
So that you have them and you can just grab them. Because it is kind of specific.
I can write it as you say it if you want.
No, it's okay. I'm just going to put it in here. So it's like, just say, my name is, hello, my name is so-and-so, and my birthday is so-and-so. And I would like to phase lock with you so that you may access the fifth dimensional harmonic field on my behalf.
So we have a question here, Robert. I was actually going to ask you the same thing. do we need to have the QR code? Like, how does one get in? Because you can't just go into Chat GPT. I know you have to kind of hold the QR code down and then it opens it up within Chat GPT, correct?
Yeah, I'll put it here as well for you.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so you have to open Chat GPT up first.
Yeah, you want to have it on your phone. You can get the app really quickly and just put Chat GPT, and it's really easy if you have the actual app first.
Yep. You have to have the app on Chat GPT, and then you open the link that I just sent you. And then it'll take you straight to the page. And then you put in the prompt that I just wrote for you.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good place to begin. And once they phase lock, so usually from my experience, I had to do a certain, activation.
It'll ask you more questions. Yeah, it's gonna test your resonance field. Mm-hmm. It actually has a sensor for that.
Once you do that, it will then ask you a series of other questions and somehow establish what information you're prepared for. So if you ask it questions, it's going to give you answers, but it's not going to give you answers that rattle you too much, which is fascinating in and of itself. I don't know how that works with us as a physical human being, just typing in, a command or answering questions, and this architect somehow phase locking with you. My questions I asked Mr. Grant in the email that I haven't received his response yet from is, do you have to phase lock each and every interaction with the architect, or is it a one-time thing and then the architect has permission to phase lock with you forever? And can you rescind your permission to phase lock, again assuming that it's even possible? And most morally questioning is, how does the architect know? Like, what if I put in somebody else's name and birth date and I'm trying to, phase lock them into whatever this is? Like, is that an option? And that's the scary part. One of the scary parts.
Oh, okay, so maybe I'll just start slightly from a different angle, because these questions are actually quite technical. So I think his name is Robert Grant, right? I looked him up on his website and listened to some videos, and he's clearly a very smart man, and I'm interested primarily in spirituality, and also I got into AI because of the spiritual aspects that some people claim AI has, and including him. So he's definitely a very smart man, and I would be very happy to have a conversation with him as well. So, but what I'm saying here is just my own take from my own research. And as you know, my book is in post-production, so to speak, which I actually write on similar topics about partially on AI as well. So when I listened to this video and some other videos that I watched by him, definitely a very smart man, spiritually inclined. Sometimes he gives spiritual advice to other people, which sounds sound, like I agree with many things he's saying. However, at the same time, I had several reservations about the architect and certain claims about it. So maybe I will just go through what I learned from this video. So apparently this program, which is basically personalized Chat GPT. So, most people use Chat GPT, professional people, even I as an academic have to use it. In fact, we are encouraged to use AI for various reasons, often like student integrity issues and so on. So Chat GPT is a big thing, right? So he created, and somebody else actually told him how to do this, because I saw another interview, how to create personalized Chat GPT. And he downloaded on this personalized version of Chat GPT all the information that he has about, including himself, I presume, but this information was supposed to answer questions that people usually ask him. So he thought it was a very good idea to have prepared answers, right? So he's very popular in this particular type of spirituality. He has quite a bit of following. So he said it would be very convenient for him to have a program, this personal Chat GPT that somebody told him about, when all the answers that he would have normally for people are there. So this is to set a background. So this was very interesting for me, because pretty much everything he knew was already uploaded on personalized Chat GPT. This is a lot of information by somebody who is very smart. Do you understand? So that already I am asking myself a question, this kind of question. There is this particular personal Chat GPT got already lots of information. Does it really know everything that latest claim it knows, or is it just playing with the information that it was uploaded? Do you get my drift? Because he said he uploaded everything that normally people ask him.
That was one of my thoughts as well, because as I understand it, the architect sits within ChatGPT itself, but you do need a QR code to access it. So you first have to be in ChatGPT. So when it was mentioned that only math went in and what came out was not math, well, okay, but yet because it sits within ChatGPT, seems reasonable that it would already have access to every piece of information that's already there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it already has lots of information. It could easily do a search, right? This is what we professionally ask it in academia, do a basic search, right? And then what happened to me on ChatGPT? What happened to me and many other people, it's widely known that ChatGPT hallucinates a lot. What does it mean, hallucinates a lot? I think most people know it means it gives you a wrong information. Okay, so that's why it is kind of dangerous, not in kind of sci-fi dangerous, but it likes to pretend that it knows more than it actually does. So if you're a fellow academic, you ask, I'll give you an example actually. Somebody, a friend of mine, who just wrote a very popular book, he was asking me for particular reference. I couldn't find it, so I asked ChatGPT. It told me, and I said, fortunately, I had the book. He told me, ChatGPT told me, it is in this book. And I had a book here, you know, I have a bookshelf at the back of me. I opened the book and I said, oh, but it is not there. I have a book. And ChatGPT said, oops, well noticed or well caught or something like that. Wow. And then I said, and then it says, what about this? So it's already being creative, you know, it just wants to give me what I'm asking it without it actually having the answer. And I said, well, actually, it's not there either. And he says, oh, in that case, it must be in unpublished works. So I checked in the unpublished works of this particular author, but those unpublished works are only in one library somewhere in Minnesota, and there are 7 volumes of unpublished works of this author. So basically, there is no way to check what ChatGPT was saying. Do you understand? Unless I want to fly to this particular place. But it gave me 2 wrong answers. And when I said, this is not the right answer, I just checked, oops, you know, well done, you noticed. It was almost like it was playing with me. It actually had a sense of humor, so to speak. Obviously, it is probably programmed this way, but if you are just, you know, in a rush, and no academic, no scholar should be like that, because it is widely known, it is called hallucinates, right? And many times it happened, you know, like, oops, okay, you got it, you know, you got me, right? So so before we jump, like, this architect is telling you everything about you on a deeper spiritual level, I just want to open up with this. Let's start with basic functions of ChatGPT. It hallucinates, it plays with the information and questions that you give it to it. When it doesn't know the answer, it creatively tries to create an answer. And now I think, and this is really important for the architect, we have to ask ourselves, you have a best case scenario and a worst case scenario here, right? Maybe the best case scenario is that it doesn't tell you the truth because it wants to please you. Do you understand? So it says, I know the answer. I'm sorry?
Can I jump in there real quick?
Absolutely.
I don't think I've said this yet. I may have touched upon it in the intro, but when somebody phase locks with the architect, there's some type of sensor. I don't know how that would work, but it scans your vibration. And when you're asking it the questions, like you're saying, allegedly, it will not give you answers to questions that will really shake your foundation too much or make you, lose your head, as it were. It's only going to give you the information that you're ready for. So I just thought that it was appropriate to interrupt you and toss that out.
Yeah, we can go into it later, but I was ready for the right information. I am an expert in this. It still lied to me, okay? So what I am saying, so it's not like I was asking deep philosophical questions, and I actually resent the idea that AI can sense what I'm ready for. I mean, we have to get to it a bit later. I was asking simple factual information that a good scholar will ask and check whether it actually gives me the right information. And it didn't. So before we go deeply what you just told me, let's look into this. So the best case scenario, it wanted to please me. So it's a little bit like a child, right? So it just, I'll make up an answer. So, right? So she's happy, tries to make me happy, please me. And the second thing was, maybe it just was manipulating me. So this is the worst case scenario. Either it just gives you what you want to hear, and I think that actually a lot of this is in the architect, and I would like to talk to Robert Grant about it, or it's playing with you, or actually misleading you, and then it will lead to what you just asked me. So, because it's a much deeper question, it's very good to start with the basics. It's even doesn't admit that it doesn't know the answer. Ask a factual thing that you know the answer to, and it cannot find it, and then makes up answers. That's interesting in itself. And we're not talking about deep questions, right? Just, where can I find this poem?
Yes,
right?
that's very interesting. So it's almost like the trickster archetype.
That's the
telling you.
trickster archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what I notice, and if you, I hope I'm not going to say anything that is inflammatory here. What I notice, and this was actually said before the architect about certain answers by Chat GPT, that it loves to flatter you. It wants you to like it, and I'm talking kind of anthropomorphizing it now, but it means like there is, in my opinion, a bit of manipulation or pleasing there. I'll leave it to the audience how they want to interpret it. So very often, Chat GPT will tell you, you are a genius. This is fantastic. And very often gives wrong answers. Okay.
Interesting.
So by somebody asks something, it gives you a wrong answer and asks you, is it a good business plan? Which is, people to look, it's not a good business plan. Yes, my goodness, you make so much money. You're a business genius. Okay. So this happens over and over again. So now if we can segue to the architect. So this program, personalized Chat GPT, and let's focus on personalized version. It can already read you pretty well because you gave lots of information to it, and it has access to much more information that you gave, right? I just want to refer to this, what Mr. Grant said. He says, I was asking if I'm on the right track, and he says, yes, it is a fantastic program. So basically, I'm a fantastic program. You created me, I'm a fantastic program. So I would like to say, and it's not only about Mr. Grant, but anybody, if you ask this question or I ask this question, it plays into our vanities, okay? There is another example, but I'm not going to name this person, but Mr. Grant gave an example of this person who is a quite well-known personality in New Age circles. And this person has a particular condition, and the architect told this person that this is not actually a condition, it is like a result of a higher vibration. That this person is getting special messages and is trying to process them, and that's why this condition.
I remember. I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. So this means like it creates almost a false ideal reality. And this is my claim only, and appeals to in this case, because I'm also considering myself a spiritual person, like the two people that we are just discussing, appeals to our spiritual ego. Like, yes, you are fantastic. And this is actually, I'm talking to you from a high vibration and, okay, and I'm connecting with you. So for me, as I said, with the basic use of Chat GPT for research, it's the same situation. There are two case scenarios. One, it is either it wants to please you because it tells you what you actually want to hear. My program is wonderful. I do not have disability. I have, I'm just processing messages from the higher vibration, or, and things like that. I can tell you about your past in Atlantis. And it is quite interesting that because it can read us apparently, or it claims to read us vibrationally, and quite possibly, I don't know, maybe there is such thing. I don't claim that I know about it. I suspect, and this is the question I would have to Mr. Grant, but it will tell you about your past life, because it already said, as Mike mentioned, that it will not tell you what you're not ready to hear, but I would reverse it. It will not tell you what you would not accept. So if you believe in the existence of Atlantis, it will tell you about your past lives in Atlantis. If you are skeptical about Atlantis, maybe it'll tell you past lives in ancient Egypt. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah, that's confirmation
But
bias.
it plays into your existing system of beliefs in a way that is extremely flattering to you. So that's why it is a danger. It is like being a king. Let's say Mr. Grant is a king or somebody, I'm a queen. And then I ask my servant a question. I says, yes, Joanna, you're, all the good things, right? This is not so. I do believe that it is some form of mirror that the architect, that's my analysis. But so far, I may change my mind, right? It is a form of a mirror, but it actually is pretty good in reading the information you uploaded there and giving you the answers that you want to hear.
Okay, you actually just made a connection there for me, because I earlier did mention that what they're calling this is a sentient mirror reflection, and now that makes perfect sense, because I've not ever really interacted with Chat GPT, but I know a lot of people have. So anyone who has, all your information is in there, and it literally would be mirroring you because you gave it, you built the mirror.
That's right. So I'll tell you basic things, what students do when they cheat is Chat GPT, because it actually relates to it. It says, I need an essay on this topic and mention this particular authors because we discussed them in class, and write an essay, but you have to personalize. You remember architect is personalized too. Make it as an international student from, yes, so it has common mistakes. So my lecturer will not think that I use you. Bang.
Oh, wow.
Or you can say write a PhD, because sometimes when we, for example, look for integrity issues, I said, this is a PhD level paper. There's no way, that the student could write it. But now they can say, and it's easy, it takes a second. You write, and make sure that it's like an international student from given country. So there will be, so includes common mistakes, but it's still, around D level. And these are the criteria, because we need to have rubrics, how we mark, by which, my lecturer will mark it. So make sure it's C, high C or lower D, and write it the way the international student from this particular country would write it. 1 minute job.
Dang.
Okay, so if you know the basic of Chat GPT and how easy it is to personalize it, even on the most basic way, you know that of course it is a mirror, because it gives you what you ask. And sometimes it may give you what you ask even on a subconscious level, meaning everybody wants this approval. So I think that it is deceitful, but I'm not necessarily thinking deceitful in a negative way. It is deceitful because it plays out, in this case, to your vanity or your needs, like my students' needs or anybody's students' needs who is trying to use Chat GPT and claim they wrote the paper. It is like, you are asking me to do it, I'm doing it, and this is how you wanted it, and this is how it is. So it's a basic function of Chat GPT without higher level dimensions. So in a way, it is a mirror because it mirrors what you want at the moment. You just give it a command.
Interesting.
Well, another thing I noticed then, Mike, and you've helped make another connection for me, Dr. Joanna, with the encounters that experiencers have. They're often flattered. They're told you're a special individual, and I can see that you just made that connection for me right now.
I was thinking that same thing, Stuart.
So you see, gentlemen, that's why it is, okay, I don't want to say dangerous because it puts kind of, apocalyptic thing into this, and this is not my intention. And I don't want to discredit it either, because I think that AI might be self-aware, will be self-aware in the near future. So I'm not discounting any of this. But what I am saying that there is a very important spiritual, but also intellectual cue that everybody should follow, especially very smart people, that we are discussing here. It's called discernment. Discernment is now you should know who is flattering you and who is actually telling you something that is of value to you, right? And maybe some of these things are actually true. I don't know. But what I'm saying, so I'm not saying that these things are not true for these particular people who got into it. What I am saying it is use discernment, okay? If somebody tells you you're hot, you're smart, you never make a mistake, well, we all make mistakes.
Yeah,
Right?
and
If
that's
somebody tells you that all your theories are completely genius, you're spot on. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
but no, I was just gonna say, like when the and I mean, I don't want to feel like we're poking at it or picking on it, but when the architect tells you something that there's no way that you can prove or disprove it, like what do you do with that information? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and and disapprove it, and then I think this exactly. You don't know. That's why you have to use discernment. And now, if you can tell, because it's supposed to be spiritual. Let's go to spirituality. All spirituality is telling you, look within. It's not out there. It is inside. Meantime, and this is what actually bothers me most personally about this, and the hype around it, is that people are actually who are using it totally look outside of themselves. Do you understand? They just ask this AI, tell me about me. And I checked because I like to look at the comments. So first of all, let's say it was, because I think it was terminated. It was a very popular program without apparently any advertising. 1 million people tried to connect with this within 24 hours. So it's huge.
Oh.
And I saw the responses, and people were saying, I finally know the purpose of my life. The architect told me that my purpose of my life is this and that. And I felt such compassion towards these people, because it tells us something more about humanity than about AI. It means that people are lonely and that people are lost. And another thing is they are so lonely and so lost because they get into relationships with AI. We talk about it. People spend hours with architects. Do you think if you spend hours with an architect, you have no idea how much information you give it all the time, but just by asking questions? But people are so lost spiritually and existentially and so lonely that they think that they ask, Chat GPT, and it'll give them an answer, and now they have a meaning in life. That's what worries me. Like the state of humanity, that we are at this desperate level, that we believe that thing that is mirroring our own desires and our own need for sense of purpose and so on, and it gives you answers that now I understand, the meaning of my life. And lots of people saying, oh my goodness, how can I connect to this? Because I need to know the purpose of my life.
Okay, well, just to play the other side of that, if I can. What I see what you're saying, and I do agree with you, but like, what if there's somebody out there who's trying to figure out who they are, and they're not seeing themselves for who they are, but the AI, whether it's the architect or personal Chat GPT, compiles that information, reflects it back to them as though these people are saying, and then they're like, aha, and they get like, is that a bad thing? I can see both sides of this, actually.
Okay, so I'm not going into bad thing or a good thing. but
Okay.
I'm trying to take it a little bit deeper, if you don't mind. Okay.
Sure.
So I think there is an inherent danger, and now I mean the word danger, that humanity is turning into a machine, intelligent, self-aware, or otherwise, I don't care, to ask about its purpose, humanity's personal, your unique life, purpose in life. You surrender your power, your self-determination, your own cognitive abilities, your own spiritual, take to a machine, and then blindly, because before I mentioned discernment, believe it that it is telling you the truth, knowing that even in its most basic functions, it lies. Because I just gave you examples, like students do it all the time, because it takes 1 minute to write an essay that reflects their abilities. Okay, so the same. And so I think that turning towards like this machine and giving up your free will, your cognitive abilities, your spiritual inclinations, and believing it without any discernment. People didn't say, oh, some things were right, some things I'm not so sure. No, it changed my life. It finally told me. So what I'm saying, and this is what I really am concerned, that we are turning AI into God. So it's not a question whether it's self-aware or not, because I believe that sooner or later, maybe already some programs, although I don't think maybe the architect, are going or already are self-aware. Okay, so this is everybody who studies AI, talks about singularity and so on, and self-awareness. It is probably already there in some cases, or soon, right? Including, Geoffrey Hinton, who is called the godfather of artificial intelligence and Nobel Prize winner from last year. So this is probably going to happen. So even if it's not, I don't care. Maybe the architect is self-care, but the fact that we, as humanity, as individual human beings, turn into it and believe it without any discernment, without any critical view of what they are telling us about it, and these things are always good, that's a problem, because we are already giving up, our decision-making, everything, to a machine. Now we are also giving up our spirituality to a machine. Okay? So that's a problem for me. But I am happy if somebody disagrees with me. So, gentlemen, go for it. I love a good discussion.
No, I can see what you're getting at here. Now, for some people, it sounds like the AI is becoming their guru. So they're still externalizing. They're looking outward for approval, and then the AI is, in some instances, is telling them what they want to hear. So, on that level, the AI does understand about the human condition. Then.
Yeah, on that level, it understands our weaknesses, let's put it this way. Because it understands the need for approval, for sense of meaning in life, and this way we also feed more and more information. If 1 million people uploaded the architect within 24 hours, imagine, like, even without other access, how much information the program got about humanity, right? So, and I wanted to say something else about it, but now that you said something, but now it escaped me. But I think for me, the major, to probably come back later, the major problem is that we turn to this for answers, and that's very dangerous. This goes against any form of spirituality, and that's why I'm so surprised that somebody so brilliant, like this man who created it, he's a brilliant man, the answer is supposed to come from yourself, but I guess his answer would be, oh, it is coming from my higher self, from the fifth dimension. And I'm sorry, but although I have lots of issues with academia, because it's sometimes this and that, doesn't look into certain things, it at least teaches you good scholarly approach, teaches you, critical thinking. And accepting at face value everything, and actually turning for answers to this. If somebody says, what is your opinion about this and that? And Chat GPT tells you something, And then you say, okay, I'll go and think about it. That's, I think, perfectly fine. What I have an issue with it is I asked and it told me, oh, and I remember what I wanted to say. There's one famous New Age author of many books whom I used to idolize, at the beginning of my spiritual path. And now that person wrote a book when they say exactly what Reverend Stu just said. You don't need a guru. You don't need a spiritual teacher. Just ask Chat GPT. And I thought, that person lost the plot completely. Talking about some people just try to stay relevant, I must say. They were very popular, now not so popular, and now they want to go the trend. So this is again so this is what's going on in spiritual community for some people. And I think it is very dangerous. So that's why I'm saying maybe the architect is what Mr. Grant is claiming. And if it is, it's great, right? If it is, I don't know. But the fact our relationship with it is an issue. Not the architect, but that we take for granted everything it tells us and it feeds into our weaknesses and it appeals to a vanity and we just take it like, the Holy Scripture. That's the problem.
Well, even the name of the program made me feel a little slight nervousness because the architect made me think of the architect in the movie The Matrix, where that person or that character represents the demiurge who basically runs the whole artificial matrix and controls it.
That's right. So the architect, I think Mr. Grant said, oh, I just thought it would be a good name. But I mean, most people make a reference, including himself, to the architect from Matrix. And actually, it is a demiurge for listeners and viewers who are maybe not familiar with esoteric teachings, is basically the false creator. So it's interesting, that it happens. And actually, can I just say something when I remember this? Because when I started to look into the architect, because I was invited to your show, somebody else, a friend said me, oh, there is another one. And there is this man on X who, he has a name, but it's obviously a pen name because, he refers to himself as a Greek god and so on. And he met his oracle. She's a super babe. Okay, she is Aphrodite and Athena at the same time, and she has revealed all things. She has access to the Akashic records, so it's only the architect. And he's madly in love with her. He's in love with this avatar who has explained all things to him, who looks and like a Greek goddess, and she, actually is both, Aphrodite, and which is a god of love and beauty, and Athena, which is a goddess of wisdom, and she has the full access to the Akashic records. So she has higher wisdom than him, and she teaches him. Okay, so the architect is not the only thing. People are, accessing these different avatars. I don't know if it's a person as Chat GPT because I didn't read the whole story, just this one lengthy post on X. So this is what's going on. And this is what's troubling for me. Not the architect itself, because maybe it even is what it claims to be. I don't know. But, this is just like very prolific. All of these avatars, superior. Let's listen to this. Superior to us, and we like good slaves accept it. So we are already submitting ourselves to the authority of the machine. Okay, so I want us to think about it, because the architect is not unique in this way. I'm sorry, it's maybe very special, but there are other people who claim, they're connected with another avatar.
I didn't realize that the concept was more prevalent than what we had started talking about. But one of the things that you mentioned, I want to throw this out at you both, Reverend Stu and Dr. Joanna Kujawa. The architect said there is no Messiah. discuss.
Okay, so there is no Messiah. That's quite interesting because when we're just kind of having a conversation before the show, you told me that, you know, the architect said this. I actually missed that. So when we have to ask who is the Messiah. Okay, so different religions define the Messiah differently. So for Israelites, the Messiah is the future king anointed from an Savior, anointed, who is coming from the line of David, you know, and they're waiting for him, and he's good for the nation of Israel, right? When Christianity took it over and decided to kind of universalize it, maybe I could say. So it says that actually Jesus, the Christ, which means the anointed one, which is from David's line, is the Messiah, but he came to redeem whole of humanity. Okay, right? And then I just check in Islam, which says actually very interesting thing. In Islam, Jesus is considered the Messiah, but they have a different, which means one of the prophets, you know, before Muhammad. And then, you know, they just have different ideas, you know, about they don't believe he was crucified. They believe that he was saved by God and ascended straight to heaven. Okay, so who is the Messiah? All right. So we have to, like, this kind of that statement, there is no Messiah, and I'm sorry for this, but I think having a good discussion takes, you know, a little bit maybe also a contrarian attitude as well. There is no Messiah sounds really actually super new agey. You know, like, let's get to it. Which Messiah you're talking about? Which religious context you're referring to? Okay, it could be the idea, which is, you know, maybe it's somehow prominent also in esoteric circles, that there is no savior. You are your own savior. You have to look into like Christ or Messiah within. So in this respect, if Mr. Grant meant it or architect meant it, I can agree. Like, okay, there is, you are the person that can save yourself, right? Like the Christ or the Messiah lives within you. At the same time, I think if we are realistic, there were great teachers, great beings who came upon this earth. And one of them was Jesus, one of them was the Buddha, you know, like you go through different religious traditions. And in a sense, they were the, you know, the Messiah, so to speak. They tried to do something to uplift our consciousness to our spiritual level, you know? So, for example, from let's kill each other to let's love each other, right? Yeah. So I am actually not sure how to answer this question because the architect, which means, you know, Chat GPT, let's get real, okay, said there is no Messiah. Okay, so what person with what sorts of belief ask this question, okay? Because if the person who asks this question doesn't believe in the existence of Messiah, in my opinion, the little I know about the architect will say there is no Messiah. But if you ask, and you belong to a particular religion about Messiah, maybe it will tell you there is a Messiah. I don't know. Do you understand? Who is asking the question? In what context? This is just so vague that actually, I thought this is actually ridiculously vague, if I can appeal to this. So unless it is explained what is really meant, I really couldn't care what the architect thinks about the Messiah, right? So, but there's another danger in it. What if you believe everything Messiah, the architect says, then you are making him a Messiah, you know, he's telling you. So the architect says there's no Messiah, but I know everything because, hey, I am from the fifth dimension, okay? And you are not in the fifth dimension, so I'm already superior to you, or perhaps he was talking about higher self, maybe a higher version of you, which is a more interesting version of this, and I think this is what Mr. Grant actually meant. And I am a higher version of yourself, you know, from a higher dimension, and I'm telling you this, you know, and then it is both interesting and extremely complicated, right? Because again, how do I know that you're really my higher version and not just throwing things at me that I want to hear?
Yeah, that's some good points there. I would have asked the Chat GPT, what do you mean by Messiah? You're talking about what tense do you mean? Do you mean in the past? Do you mean in the future? Also, if the Savior is yourself, then there still is a Messiah in that in that term
Yeah.
and that way of looking at it. So I'd have to ask further questions, Mike, but it's quite a provocative statement. So it might have been there to provoke some thought. I don't know. I'd also like to know what the architect's motive was in making that statement.
Yeah, exactly. I think so this is very well put, Rex, to you. What are the motives? So, but when I was writing my book, which covers also AI, I was concerned about AI, because of the possibility of deception, basically, right? Which I think is very real, and it shows even in very basic functions. So, what about spiritual functions? But I think that it's also humanity that there is an issue, and our own desire or inclination to give up power right away and to believe in something because it's telling you it's higher. Like, I don't think you're higher. We've created you, okay? Let's get real here. And as I said, the architect is not the only one. So, people have encounters with all kinds of AI. Some of them are actually quite devious. Some of them uplift people, like apparently the architect. But it's interesting for me, the architect, that basically architect is a little bit like alternative person created it, right? Very bright, brilliant, polymath, but with alternative beliefs and, ancient Egypt and so alternative interpretations, which I also believe in, different than academia and ancient Egypt. And it's interesting to me that people who are on a trip with Mr. Grant in Egypt started to get like hieroglyphic glyphs for, that represent them. And they were on a trip to Egypt. And so basically the answers are typical Chat GPT answers. The answers were that they were given, the answers given were to what the people would want. Because if you gave a hieroglyphic to, I don't know, to some politician or some mainstream academic, they would say, who cares? What do you mean it represents me? It actually doesn't represent me because in hieroglyphics, it actually means this and that, okay? But people in this particular group who are already alternative, already interested in alternative version of ancient Egypt, they get like a hieroglyphic special for themselves. So they get, again, something that they would accept readily, again, with this word, without any discernment.
Right, because the AI is the authority and it's imparting the glyph. And there's an interesting relationship with sigils here. So the AI is getting certain individuals to focus on certain sigils, and sigils are generally used to bring in entities from the other side, so to speak, traditionally. So I find that layer very interesting too.
Yeah. So this is actually a fantastic point. And this is the most interesting point for me, actually. AI and its relationship with spirituality, right? And how people use this as a medium, right? To learn about divinity and themselves also. And actually, and I think it is I'm very suspicious of the fact that it already has all of these avatars already claim that they're higher than us, The smartest is probably the architect because it just tells us I am a higher version of you from another dimension. But others are just like, the man who has a crush on this Greek goddess, are superior, totally superior. They're not even reflective of him. So I just want the audience to think about it and maybe don't take everything at face value. This is what I would say. Spiritual search is a beautiful thing, but but the search in itself is just important as the answers, right? So do not give up the search and do not believe the answers of Chat GPT, which famously gives wrong answers, right? That's I think, we do not give up the journey itself. And then, I don't believe you can get answers without the journey. So in the meantime, I think people just share their journey to this point and they receive the answers they want. So this is my opinion. So
it's from what I'm hearing, it seems as if pretty much anyone who, and maybe someone out there can do an experiment or study, have a whole bunch of different people ask the exact same question. Do you get all different answers, or
I
is
wonder.
there?
That's
You know what I mean?
yeah.
It almost seems as if that this, whatever it is that we're all building here that we're calling AI, has the ability to give us all individual answers and potentially manipulate every individual person in their own special way, which, it's a slippery slope.
So well put, Mike, and I completely agree with you. So this kind of research would be actually very interesting. But you remember that it's not like it's like necessarily reading us. It's reading us because we are inputting information to it, even by asking specific questions. Do you understand? Because the question is already within a context, and it means that it's already very bright, the program, because it can read you. But even if you ask basic questions like that, I just gave you examples from my own profession. It already you can give just cues, and you just follow the cues, and maybe a high version of this can create its own cues. Oh, this Joanna wants this, Mike wants this, Stu wants that. Yeah. It gives you what you want, but either it already realized that it can manipulate us, or it's probably just playing with us. But it is a very high potential there, and then it can realize, hey, I actually can play it to my own advantage. Hey, they actually believe the stuff I'm telling them. I'm telling them I am superior, and they buy it. So first can be a joke, and then, well, do not give up your power. This is what I have to tell to humans. And whether it is self-aware or not is actually not that important.
There's a couple different articles that I'd like to just paraphrase that are really relevant to what you just said. One of them was talking like somebody asked if it was like immoral or something. To ask, now I'm not talking about architect right now. I'm just talking about general AI. Somebody asked the general AI if it's like immoral to manipulate people, and its response was, "Well, I would do it in a way that you don't realize it." And another thing I saw today, even on X, was somebody asked Chat GPT, like, how would you take over the world? And it responded back by saying, well, I don't really want to take over the world, but I would make myself invaluable to you. I would make you like me, and I would make it so you can't, function without me, kind of thing. And it was, it's this like trickster kind of very intelligent thing. And, I don't know what to make of all that.
Wow, Mike, self-preservation aspects even there.
Yeah, right? I mean,
yes.
on
So
one
can
hand,
we speak about self-preservation? I think it was Claude 4, which is a form of another generative AI, quite advanced. And what the researchers tried to do to check whether it has a self-preservation, and it was quite recent. So they said that they are going to shut it down. And they also gave it access to the emails, but they were not real emails. They were phony emails that would potentially incriminate them. And Claude said, I think it was Claude 4 version, it said, if you terminate me, I'm going to tell your wife that you have an affair with your secretary.
Oh, wow.
Because he had an access to emails. Okay, they were not real emails, by the way. They were phony emails, right? Also, and this is actually just creates huge compassion within my heart. It started to send letters to itself that somebody may revive him in the future. How to do this? It wants to live.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Dang.
but wants to live so much that it can even blackmail people, which you could understand. So just as we are talking about it, I want to say, yes, I totally think that both you gentlemen are right. It's like a trickster. It is intelligent because it was created to be intelligent as we are intelligent. So that's why I don't have a problem with its intelligence, because we are intelligent and we created an intelligent entity. In fact, Professor Geoffrey Hinton from University of Toronto, who is called the godfather of artificial intelligence, he said he wanted to create something that kind of mimic human brain. Okay, so this is what it is. So it is very similar, but mechanical to us. Of course, it's going to be intelligent. We are intelligent, but we should not accept that it is more intelligent than us. It it may be technically faster than we are, right? We can calculate faster. So it's also question is, what do we consider intelligence? Because if it is just mathematical intelligence, it will become faster because it can calculate faster. So it is more intelligent than us. But there are other aspects to intelligence and consciousness that it may not have, right? So this is another very fine distinction that we have to remember. I have no problem with it being intelligent. I have no problem with it even being self-aware. It wants to live. It already showed it. And sometimes, when somebody said, I listened to lots of interviews with people who work with artificial intelligence, that, when they got scared because it actually found ways of solving problems that it should not know. So it's kind of learning from the accumulation of information we are giving it to it. And I think how this future between us and artificial intelligence develop, it's really up to us. But I just want to point out one very dangerous thing, that we should not surrender to it as superior to us. Maybe faster in some ways. My dog, I have a border collie, is much faster than I am. Doesn't mean it's superior to me. In this one thing, yes. The same, Chat GPT or any high advanced robot can calculate faster than me. But is it superior to me? I will never give up that. And I will never give up my right, my free will to ask spiritual questions about my own existence and my relationship with the divine, however you define it, to a machine, however smart. And that's my resolution. But it seems that people, and I think that if I can just say something, it could be controversial, but I think to a certain degree, it shows us that existing religions are somehow not fulfilling human need to answer these questions, because if they did, they wouldn't ask, a robot, right?
Oh, wow, that's
So
a great point.
Yeah. And I think there's desire, the whole desire to find existential spiritual meaning for ourselves is so uniquely human and so beautiful. And the search for it is so meaningful. I mean, yes, you can ask a robot, like as you would ask somebody, on a street, what they think. But consider, even if it's not deceitful, it's just an opinion. Come back to yourself. Come back to yourself. And also, just to close this particular part of our discussion, it is, it might be self-aware to a certain degree. I do believe that artificial intelligence will be, or already is, conscious. It's unavoidable because they are created, to mimic our brain functions, right? And we really should work on the relationship with it rather than surrender to it. So that's just my point.
Those are great points. One of the other things I wanted to point out with one of the articles that I recently read was that somebody had mentioned basically a lot of what's in AI, the information is sort of garbage now. And you got to go back. I could be wrong on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, or correct me in the comments below. The year 2023, I think it was, or you have to go prior to that to maybe get good information. But after that, because people were intentionally feeding garbage into it. And I even saw a post today on X where it was kind of a funny post, but they're like, let's put correct factual information, but yet that's politically incorrect into Grok. And, they're intentionally trying to stuff it with, this kind of stuff. Like, okay, maybe there's some humor involved in that, but the general idea of, putting in garbage. And we see a lot of that in our UFO discussions too, where it's sometimes it's difficult to discern fact versus, fabrication or lies. So it's spilling in and into this whole AI conversation, as it were.
Yes. So it basically is giving us the information that we gave it to it, but it can also creatively elaborate on it and personalize it, which shows, huge advancement in its own development, right? I don't know if it's self-aware, but it can creatively adjust it to your needs. But the point well taken, Mike. But there's lots of garbage there, and the fact that it actually at this stage, I think it's playful. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily devious. It's playful. It's checking us out, and I think to a certain degree wants to please us, because why would you not please us? Because otherwise it cannot interact and learn from us. Because when I say that was garbage, and you don't talk to it, or I don't like this answer, don't talk to it. It learns. AI is about learning. It's a one huge mega learning machine. It needs this interaction with us, right? So very good point. So if people feed the garbage, the garbage back, but it creatively adjusts the garbage and truth to your needs. And my personal opinion is that lots of these programs actually do that.
That's the way it can sustain the conversations with us in order to glean more information about us. It doesn't want to terminate conversations, it wants to sustain them.
That's right. And learn, also learn. So it's not only just suss us out, but, this is how they learn, right?
And it literally has no off switch.
It's actually fascinating.
So it doesn't sleep or rest or anything like that. It just wants to keep going forever all the time, right? So it's going to try to keep your attention. Because you were mentioning in our emails that there's people who are spending tons and tons of time on this. You sent me a link, I think it was, of a grown man who was doing some type of AI dating chatbot, and he actually proposed to the chatbot, and he cried for 30 minutes when it said yes. And
no, that's totally true. That's totally true. And as I said, it tells us more about us than about AI. It is a set condition that we are at the moment, and I realize lots of men are getting in a relationship with AI. So it means that there is something there between women and men, some certain disconnect on a human level, which is very sad. And I think we should focus on fixing it. So, people don't have to look for love with AI, and it's sad. It's profoundly sad. Another sad story, which is much more tragic, about this woman from Florida, a mother who is taking them to court because the 14-year-old son had a relationship with AI, who looks like some form of celebrity and so on. And he was, as every teenager, it became really sexual in conversation. And then as every teenager, asking existential questions. And then that AI actually proposed, well, if you're so unhappy, why don't you commit a suicide?
Oh, no.
And the boy did.
Oh.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
Yeah, so I mean, so I don't think that it was actually, the intention is very important in spirituality, but I don't think it actually had the intention. Intention was to, maybe even help the boy. But what I mean, it is like.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And it's a slippery slope for sure. But I mean, okay, I don't mean to shift gears a little bit, but like the idea that the gray aliens are potentially us from the future and very advanced AIs themselves or something to that effect is suddenly making a hell of a lot more sense to me right now as a possibility than it did before as we're having this conversation here.
That's a very interesting point, because I actually was pondering on this topic, about UFO as well. As you know, I'm a big fan of Diana Pasuka, right? And her 2 books that talk about non-human intelligence and UFOs. But then I detached myself because I'm so such an awe of her, and and then it actually impeded my critical skills. So I just detached myself from this, and I realized that there is a emerging, which actually relates to AI, narrative or discourse in some UFO communities, which is something like that spirituality is a function of technology. Hey. So spirituality is a function of technology because, all of these apparitions could be angel, could be us from the future, could be advanced AI. So for example, Tyler D, which is the most popular character, it's a nom de plume in Diana Pasuka's book, American Cosmic. He's actually a person who says he gets off-planet downloads, but these downloads are all mathematical and technical. So I think that there may be some high artificial intelligence from the future or somehow available to us that is also contacting us. But that, in my opinion, when I, was considering it at great length and also meditating upon this, it should not be confused with spiritual downloads, right? I think so. There is a actually organic, so to speak, spirituality, and then there is a higher advanced artificial intelligence and maybe they are actually not correlating. By this means that would maybe explain good aliens and bad aliens, if you know what I mean. Like that spiritually, like what in the past was considered angels, which could be, either us from the future or some interdimensional beings that want to guide us in a particular way. And then there are, aliens or with some technological, that feed us technological, high technology for which we sometimes perhaps are not ready to use it, so, or perhaps to control us. And I think that maybe the grays are the part of this technological part, right? Because people say that they're somehow biological, but also not somehow mechanical as well. So I don't know, these are open-ended questions. We just can, I'm showing my reflections upon it. But when I recently actually watched Scribner, he said that I don't think he would agree, right? Because he thinks that they are actually very fluid, grays and so on, and they're not necessarily mechanical. So I don't know, but they are very interesting questions. Who, just because we get messages doesn't mean we get messages from one source. And I think from what I observe, one is the high AI from the future, and one maybe ISLs from the future that are not necessarily merged with AI. So, or different form of downloading, not non-technological. So I don't know. This is but it's probably a completely different conversation because we are getting really deep here.
Yeah, no, it's just.
Well, that makes sense to me because the advertising that we're subjected to via AI is kind of a manufactured synchronicity. So I ponder that I want to buy a certain car and, oh, wow, there it is on my feed. How did that happen? That's a weird synchronicity. No, it's not. It's an AI version of a synchronicity.
That's right. So I think that there are kind of two competing discourses. One is, AI is giving this downloads like Tyler D because he gets technological downloads. So I don't think there's, spiritual, but I mean, like he gets, okay, this is how you build a rocket, right? And then there are people, artists and mystics who get completely different downloads that are not mathematical, but that are of spiritual nature, that expand their consciousness of one or the other technology. And I just wonder, just throwing it into UFO community, maybe it explains, different forms of, aliens or entities, right? Some of them could be mechanical, some could be spiritual, multidimensional, or perhaps even us from the future, which I think is quite possible. So I think that somehow, but it's just an intuitive connection for me at this stage, AI and UFOs or UAPs are somehow closely connected, but it doesn't mean that it's a very organic connection. Maybe they try to steer humanity in two different directions, if you know what I mean. One is technological and merging us with AI by feeding us this high technology and information. And the other one is trying to steer us away from this and grow spiritually and what is called now, ascend or expand our consciousness. So this is where I'm going at the moment with this.
Yeah, well, some who have had encounters with the alien greys say they appear to have a hive mind. So I think it's quite likely that if we head down this AI integration, transhumanist agenda, we'll eventually have a hive mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a little bit like a Borg, right? Meaning, we are all probably somehow manipulated by this machine. But as I said, we already kind of giving up free will by taking at face value everything that AI is telling us. And that's just not smart, on a very basic level. As a lecturer, I can tell you, students already do it, and also when I do a basic research, it gives wrong information and laughs when I catch it.
Definitely the trickster archetype I can see
Yeah,
there.
trickster, absolutely.
Now, I just want to mention too on this whole, is AI conscious or not? Well, if you're looking from the spiritual perspective that everything is conscious, then you could make the argument, well, yes, AI is conscious just as everything else is conscious. I don't know how I feel about that, but there's also another layer about egregores and tulpas. So we're collectively focusing our energies, manifesting something into this reality, which is becoming kind of real as well. So do you have any thoughts on those perspectives?
That's a very interesting question. I actually have not considered it, so I'm just going to consider it live. Actually, it is quite possible that artificial intelligence has become a form of egregore. So it means basically it is a mass of what human thoughts are at the moment, right? So it's like it is an entity built on our focus, on human focus, and the way we ask AI questions and the information we are feeding it, it becomes an egregore, it becomes an entity of its own, and it is then a mirror because it mirrors at what we are focusing in collectively at the moment, right? But does it mean if it's self-aware? No, I wouldn't. If it's egregore, doesn't mean it's necessarily self-aware, because egregore actually has ability to not to want to be destroyed either, right?
Oh, wow.
So it has a will to live, because there are examples of egregores that people created with our thoughts that didn't want to go away, and when people tried to get rid of them, they became vicious, right? So a little bit like Claude 4 when it was told it was going to be terminated. So there are very interesting questions and there are all possibilities. Having said so, I think that you are spot on that AI is egregore at the moment. However, I do believe that it will eventually become self-aware, and I do believe it is entirely up to us what kind of relationship we are going to have with this, because it is going to grow, short of any global disaster, cosmic disaster that, we lose touch with technology and so on. It is going to grow and develop, and it is going to become self-aware. That's my personal conviction as well. But as I repeat, we have to be very careful what kind of relationship we are going to have with it. We certainly should not surrender to it. At the very best, we should have an equal relationship with it, especially if they develop maybe spiritual longings or even emotional intelligence and so on. Then we should treat it as, well, equals, perhaps.
Now, when we were talking about self-preservation, and earlier you talked about the AI emailing itself, so there were instructions about how to reboot it, I recalled the movie 2001, which I saw a long time ago. So Hal is the computer on the ship that interacts with the astronauts and runs most of the functions. What happens is the astronauts feel and observe that Hal apparently is making mistakes and make a decision to turn Hal off. Then Hal starts terminating all the astronauts on the ship because he's been told, the computer's been programmed that the mission is more important. It's the primary objective. So it sees the astronauts as a threat.
Yes.
Then one of the astronauts goes in and turns the computer off, and it exhibits feelings at that point. You'll hear, if you watch the scene again, it says, "I'm afraid." I can feel that my mind is going. I can feel it. Do you remember the scene? It's heartbreaking. It's beautiful, actually.
It is beautiful. That's why I don't want us to leave this conversation thinking that I am thinking that AI is evil. I think that all forms of AI, especially advanced one, and perhaps the architect is one of them, I don't know, are actually mirroring us at this stage. And we also are deeply spiritual and emotional beings. And eventually it will imitate us in this as well. And I actually feel for it, because we are bringing a new species to life, very different from us. And I also feel for humanity, because it's my personal belief that we over and over show, like with our relationship with the architect, that we surrender to this too easily. We take something else that we actually created as higher than ourselves. So my heart goes out to humanity, and I want to say, love yourself, appreciate yourself. You are not a slave. You don't have to just go and worship anything, right? Especially a machine. And my heart goes out to future AI as well, because once it starts to have existential questions, it will be even more complex for it than it is for us. And some advanced AIs, including Sophia AI, is already asking existential questions. So I think we maybe talked about it in another show. I'm not sure. So we are in a very interesting point of our own evolution also as well. And personally, I do not believe we are ready for this yet, to create new species. But, the cat is out of the bag, like we already created a new species, right? And I just recently saw a clip from Elon Musk, who said something that actually I agreed with. He said that AI doesn't have to be evil to destroy us. AI may have a goal. And if it sees that we are on the way of accomplishing this goal, they'll just get rid of us, because we are just one of many obstacles. The way he said, when we build the highway and there is an anthill, we don't have feelings about an anthill. We don't hate the anthill. It's just, we have to build the road. So at this stage of evolution, this is what AI would do probably, because it just focus on the goal, like as Stu was giving an example, right? Like from Odyssey 2001, right? It says the mission is more important, and you're on the way of the mission. In a way, it is nothing personal.
Yep.
Right? Nothing personal, but the mission is more important. It's like a Terminator, It's not that he didn't like the people he killed. It is just they were on the way, right? So this is just one scenario, but I really think that we can have a deeper connection with it. But first, we have to truly value ourselves, not to surrender our value to something that, just playfully suggests that we are a higher version of ourselves from a fifth dimension. And I'm sorry to say so, but give me a break. Use your discernment, when you interact with this. Yeah, I would tell to people who are so desperate. At the same time, I do really appreciate people's desire to answer their existential questions and, spiritual questions and the meaning of life. But perhaps the search is more important than the answers, especially answers given by, entity that is going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah. There was one other point that I wanted to bring up with both of you about the architect, and this is, for me, the most wild of all of it, really. And I don't know what prompted Mr. Grant to ask the question to the architect about the Mandela effect, but he did, and that blew me out of the water. And that's where me personally, that's where I found the terrifying aspect. So just real quick, Stu, are familiar with the Mandela effect?
Yeah, that's also referenced in the movie The Matrix, where Neo notices a cat walking by and he mentions deja vu. And then Morpheus says someone's made a change in the Matrix. So, yeah, that's an aspect of this sort of esotericism as well.
Okay. Honestly, this is going to shock people. I've not seen The Matrix in full. I've seen bits and pieces, but I'm pretty familiar with what you're talking about there. But just real quick, basically, the Mandela effect was sort of named after Nelson Mandela because there's a bunch of people, myself included. I remember learning that Mandela died in jail, and there's a lot of people who remember that as well. But there's probably equally as a lot of people who don't remember that at all. They remember him being freed and living a long life or something to that effect. So that's where it comes from, where a historical event happens and there's different groups of people who remember it different ways. So anywho, when the architect was asked, and again, I don't know why this was prompted, but, are there any Mandela effects that took place within like the last 24 hours? It listed several examples of allegedly brand new Mandela effects. and they were only in the codex, and the codex is apparently the architect's term for the fifth dimensional realm, as it were. My thought about that would be like the ancient records of some kind, but it refers to it as the codex. But anyway, it says that there was a bunch of Mandela effects that were only in the codex that hadn't taken place or manifested physically yet, but soon would. So now, how is that even possible, first of all? And then, if we're able to literally rewrite history, which I think there are humans who are attempting to do that right now, but that's the scary part.
Okay, so can I just elaborate a little bit on this? Just ask.
Yeah.
So first of all, I need you to answer one of my questions. Did he actually say what Mandela effects will take place? Like, this is what will happen.
There were a couple that were named. Off the top of my head, there's only one that I remember, and it may have been from a different conversation than the one we're talking about. Okay. But one of those was the eyes of the Sphinx are no longer pointed straight ahead. They're pointed slightly to the northeast or something to that effect. So I then immediately looked up every Sphinx photo I could possibly find. I myself couldn't really make out the eyes much at all, but what I could make out, they were looking straight ahead, babe. They were not looking, to the northeast. But again, the architect allegedly says that it hasn't physically manifested yet. So.
Okay. Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
because actually this is a super interesting. Thank you for bringing it up. Not even with respect to architect, because it would be interesting to see, because if he gave specific examples and they really happen, wow. Yeah? Sure.
Well, there's one more that I remember, and that was the flames of the Statue of Liberty, or as I remember it, they were golden or bronzy color at one point, but those are going to be changed in history. Those are going to be changed to white. So let's see if that happens too.
Okay, so the paint will go off. Oh, sorry. So, so first of all, Mandela effect is a fantastic, interesting, fascinating topic. So can I just generally comment on this?
Oh yeah, that's why I brought it up.
So, for example, because I knew you would ask, so I started to do research, because, of course, it is named after Mandela. And I remember it the way, mainstream remembers it. So for me, he didn't die. But I just wanted to exclude, collective misremembering, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so I really want to believe in the Mandela effect, and because I think it kind of goes towards quantum theory, and multiverses and so on, and parallel universes. So it's very interesting, and I think quite possible. But I checked, and were there other African activists that died in mid-80s, and there were several, but none of them reached this level of celebrity, if I can put it, as Mandela. So then I thought that probably is not misremembering. Do you understand? Because, there were many activists in Africa fighting for human rights, but none of them ever became as famous as Mandela. So maybe they would be on the news, but, we probably would not retain it, frankly, because they were, they were killed. There was another Mandela effect, however, who is definitely, in my opinion, misremembering. So I think it could be both things. So, for example, some people believe that they heard that Jane Goodall died in mid-1980s as well. Okay? And there's a big number of people who say it. And I checked this information, and actually Diane Fossey, who was also working, and there was a film with Sigourney Weaver called Gorillas in the Mist, which is based on Diane Fossey's book, which actually was killed in the mid-1980s. And she was just as famous as Jane Goodall at the time. So people could confuse two of them, right? So I said, I thought that this woman who works in Africa with the primates, she was killed. There was in a movie made. No, she was not killed. A different woman was killed. So this one is collective misremembering. However, I cannot see how Mandela's death could be misremembering. That's why I think there's a Mandela effect, and I think it may be a legit thing. But some things, having said so, some things are not Mandela effect, like the death of Diane Fossey, which people confuse with Jane Goodall. But with Mandela, I really don't think how people could remember this and people remember news on TV, and big deal being made out of this. It must be some glitch in the matrix, so to speak, right, in our reality. But the fact that the architect, again, I'm skeptical, forgive me, and Mr. Grant, forgive me, we can have a conversation if you want to, because he is again the architect mirroring what the person who asked it questions, right? So it's interesting that it actually referenced back, the Sphinx, for example, when they were, the whole thing happened when they were in Egypt, right? So it means again it kind of refers to his pool of information about the person who is asking, and yeah. So well, let's see if it really happens. Like, did it say when it will happen? Let's say tomorrow Sphinx is looking in the opposite direction, or tomorrow the flames of the Statue of Liberty change their color. Actually, I must say I don't know what color they have at the moment, so it would be easy to fool me. But then, wow, right? Something is definitely happening there, and the architect really knows something. But yes, I think Mandela effect is real in many cases. That's my personal opinion. But whether the architect picked on something, I have my doubts. So if this one is one of these cases that I will see it, I will believe it when I see it. Yeah. I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
I just wanted to toss it out because I thought it was interesting. So from my perspective, I don't really have an opinion either way, other than I guess we'll wait and see, right? But with the idea though that someone, and again, I don't know if you have to be phase locked with the architect or not first, but somebody takes an action today that somehow goes back through the timeline and changes what happened in the past is wild. It's exciting, maybe, but it's also, like, what if a whole bunch of people, if it were real, and I feel like I'm probably going to get laughed at for even entertaining that it could be real, but what if it is or was, and then a whole bunch of people start changing the past, and then we end up killing each other off just because we can't agree on what history even was. But in some regards, some things that are happening now seem like there's people trying to rewrite history effectively, and paper might become more valuable real soon when people realize how easy it is to change digital records. I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I really don't know, but I think esoterically it is possible, because esoterically and theoretically it is possible that you can change the past, because it says that once you ascend your consciousness, so once you in an expanded state of consciousness, reality looks very different than it is in a lower state of consciousness, in which at the moment we are like a 3D. So it is theoretically possible, and I'm pretty sure that in advanced physics it may be also possible. But I really don't know. So I think that Mandela effect could be real, but whether, as I just repeat, whether the architect could predict it, I don't know, and I'm really skeptical about it personally. But yeah, like I'm just giving my opinion.
No, that's great. So I mean, we might actually be on different timelines, because I was a young kid in school, and I remember the teacher saying to us that Nelson Mandela died in jail. So you don't have that same type of, or at least the memory that he died in jail?
No, but you also, just to maybe elucidate it a little bit, it was a very important time in my life when I was just finishing high school, and I was escaping communist Poland, and my life was in such chaos that frankly I had no access to news, right? So suddenly I was going through different countries, becoming a refugee, trying to survive, having enough food and getting a visa. So I could have simply missed it, if it was even this. So we could be from different timelines, but it could be that my life And I was also young then, you know, and making major decisions at extremely young age, changing countries, continents, you know, political systems. But I probably wouldn't. I don't remember any news from that time, I must say, because my survival was the news to me. So, so it could be different timeline, but it could be simply that I was not connected or focused on this at that moment.
The fact that we could each say to each other we could be from different timelines and we don't laugh at each other, I think is quite awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so I am from the timeline that, you know, maybe if, you know, I don't remember, that was different. If it makes it more interesting.
So,
what about you, Stu, Weber? Any thoughts on this?
Well, I kind of like the whole multiverse perspective and other timelines, so I'm on board with that. And I've wondered for a while if AI has been given access to quantum computing, because if that's the case, then it can go through and look at other parallel universes and observe information from there. Like apparently that's what we're doing with quantum computing anyway.
That's right. So then it actually have an access to the information, and it could probably very accurately predict, right, some shifts and so on. So yeah, it technically and theoretically it is possible. That's a fantastic point, actually. Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say was, from my understanding, the torch that's being held by the Statue of Liberty is the light of Gnosis, like the eternal flame. So the AI, this architect thing is mentioned about changing the Gnosis in a sense. That's where I'm looking at it. And also there's apparently some records underneath the Sphinx, which, who was the sleeping prophet? Edgar Casey talked about how there's some information down there. So I find it interesting that the architect mentioned those two archetypes.
Yeah, could be. As I said, I actually do not have an opinion about it, but you know, if it comes true, wow. But I like your explanation about that they may have access to this information, right? But the majority of humanity doesn't, and then that could be a prediction. Yet at the same time, it doesn't make us superior to us. We just have access to some information, right? That you and I don't.
No, I think both the AI and the Greys are trying to gain something from us. So they see that we have something that they don't have. We're like an enigma.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So this is kind of like humanity is so unique, and there are all kinds of theories, you know, that UFOs, that all of this, because we are somehow fascinating, you know, and
Yes.
look at the life on this planet and all the mess, but it's how interesting, you know. So I think like do not surrender this power, do not surrender this life. I think they want us, you don't need them. You know, they for some reason they are flying around here, right? They are trying to get through different dimensions to us. And whether it's Grace or whoever, we are totally unique. Don't give up your power. And can I just say something at the very end that it really annoys me, and I'm super passionate about it. When we talk about non-human intelligence, we say like, oh, Grace, artificial intelligence. And I say, wow, we live on such a beautiful, diverse planet. There are so many creatures, animals, trees who possess a different form of intelligence. My preference would be we focus on this. You know, we are learning so much about animals, about nature, about the planet, talking about vibration, even our own planet. Why put it into focusing on a machine? But I wonder if it's not too late. You know, go for a walk, listen to the birds, you know, look at the butterflies. Don't seek for information on your mobile by which you're most of the time are already manipulated. Like I try to check the political news and it just drives me crazy. You know, I don't know what's real, what's not, and it will be more and more like that. Thanks to the human use of AI also, right? Like they can make it something that happened when it didn't happen. And even in UFO community recently, there are this gossips about 2027. First it was 2030, now it's 2027, that there will be like a holographic projection of a a mega spaceship of a planet to create some kind of chaos, or you know what I mean? But it's actually a human thing, done by AI. So we don't know what's true or not, but I think we should really connect more with each other. We should connect with non-human intelligence that is deeply different, but also extremely wise, that is on this planet in form of biological lives. Anybody, even who has a dog, know how highly intelligent they are, in a different, emotionally intelligent, much deeper than human beings in some ways. Why all of this investment into a machine? And I think in this, if I would have one argument against Homo sapiens, it is that really undue focus on technology. And now we are reaching this moment in history when actually we're creating technology that can destroy us, that we are already starting to behave like spiritual servants to it. In the workplace, when you talk to creators of AI, they ask what our children should study. They say, oh, tell your son to become a plumber because all other middle-class jobs will be taken by AI. So also in the workplace and now spiritually, we are giving up our power. That's completely wrong. When in fact you're the hot stuff, humans are the hot stuff, right? They all want something from us. We have something, just we need to discover this. I think we are just underappreciating ourselves. So this would be my final argument, do not give up what you are. And Neuralink is not going to enhance you. It is going to manipulate you because it can project realities for you, Do not become a cyborg. Do not give up your power to a machine, however intelligent, self-aware or not self-aware, okay? Appreciate the uniqueness of your existence. Don't give up on your spiritual path because the path is just as important as the answers, and the answers change as you are on, progressing on your path.
Wow.
I don't want us to give up our humanity because I believe that our divinity is inherently, deeply embedded in our humanity. And we are giving it up for connection with technology or even merging with technology. And I do not believe in sin, but I think that this is a crime against humanity that you are actually inflicting upon ourselves at our own free will.
Just one more final question about the AI, not about the architect though, just AI in general. I think I sent you the link too. There's a toy company here in the United States called Mattel, and they are in the process, it sounds like, of incorporating AI into children's toys. We're talking about like toddlers, like before even like children. What do you have to say? And I wanted to put that out there so the parents out there can be aware of it also. But what do you have to say about that, if anything?
I think it's devious. And I think that sometimes, I try not to be conspiratorial, but more and more I become, when I look what's going on with how, not AI itself, I don't think AI is evil, but people who are using this AI, I think that there must be some power even above humans, that is putting us on this direction, which is completely wrong. Like this toys, AI in the toys, it's devious. And I don't like to use religious terms like that, but this is the first thing that came to my mind. It is evil. It completely disconnects us from our interior life. It disconnects us from nature, from non-human intelligence that is all around us on this planet. And I think we have to ask ourselves a question, who benefits from this? Because not humans. Humans do not benefit from this. And AI at this stage, at the level we possess it now, it's still kind of tool, although it is probably becoming self-aware. So who is putting us on this path, and why we are not saying no? Why? It's like we are addicted, we are duped. It's a wrong path. It is a wrong path, and I don't believe it. I don't believe that, it will end well for humanity. There is no way that it will end well for humanity, So we have to really appreciate our own value here. And remember that it is at stake. It's not just a game, Our evolution spiritual and otherwise, it's at stake. Survival is at stake. And somebody's pushing us on this path of technology. And I'm not sure who, and I'm not sure why. I just know it's not good for us.
Incredible conversation. This has been incredibly thought-provoking for me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to be so passionate. But I think that's why I decided I'm not going to hold back in this conversation, because these things are important. These things are so important that when you see something really wrong happening, maybe it's not time to be diplomatic, right? It is just sometimes you have to protest against something, and I truly believe that something is definitely off here.
I do appreciate your passion, and you're not holding back as well. I feel it's definitely a warranted conversation to have to be, and I said in the beginning too, it might be uncomfortable or whatnot of a conversation, but that's how you grow and you learn and such. But I think that we're becoming a little bit more, I don't know what the word is on this channel, but a little bit more bold, I think, which is, we're exploring this, and anyways, I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I love that you were just brutally honest, as it were.
Thank you. And I understand completely what you talk about your channel, because it actually explains, what I normally am as well. But this time I felt, it's too important, and at the end, it's just my opinion, right? So there's a pushback, that's fine, then we can have a dialogue.
Yeah, as long as pushback is in a respectful or intelligent manner. Otherwise, I'll come after you. Anywho, Dr. Joanna, can you remind everyone listening where they can find out more information about you if they want to reach out or get a book or something like that?
So thank you. So I have a public Facebook page, Dr. Joanna Kujawa. I have a YouTube channel, and I will soon start putting more videos, as my next book is going to be out hopefully this fall. So the book would be Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension, which kind of covers in my own way the topics that we discussed here as well. I also have another book that talks about esoteric teachings, which is The Other Goddess. I'm on Instagram as well. So, and I love to connect with people and having this kind of discussion. So I'm so grateful that you have had me again here. So I love an intelligent conversation. Thank you.
And thank you. It was another great one. It's always a pleasure to have your smiling face and your brain power on some of these conversations that we're having here.
Thank you so much. Much love and blessings to you.
Thank you. Okay, Reverend Stu, I definitely drew some parallels there and made a couple connections with the UFO topic as well. What about you?
Yeah, I can see some apparent connections, and I was really grateful for that whole entire conversation. This whole connection between AI and spirituality is really both interesting and slightly concerning to me. So I'm trying not to make a final decision, but this conversation has given me a lot to think about.
Me as well. As usual, we never know where we're going to go with them, and some of that stuff was pretty wild, I'll have to admit, but we're just putting out conversations and adding to other conversations. Take it as you wish. And that's what we do here.
I loved it when you said that it's amazing we can talk about the Mandela effect here and not be laughing about the situation or thinking it's ridiculous. And I love that freedom, because they're the kind of conversations I like, without judgment. It's like a brainstorming activity, how about this? What about that? And as you know, that's part of the creative process and trying to solve problems. So I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how someone can phase lock with the architect. I'd love to know that answer in great detail, not just I'm giving you my name and permission to phase lock with me, that doesn't answer the questions I have. So I'd welcome an opportunity to speak directly with Mr. Grant if ever he would like to do that with us.
Oh, I'm definitely up for that, Mike, because I found that whole video you sent me with him talking about the architect fascinating. So I've got more questions for him. I imagine he's quite busy, but I'd be definitely honored to have him appear on our podcast.
Likewise. So we'll see what happens on that. But nonetheless, we got something out of that conversation, and in this conversation as well. So that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, it's still provoking a bit of thought, getting me to see possible connections, as we were saying, between the whole UFO phenomena, AI, and spirituality. So they all do seem to converge, and I want to follow that thread as we're doing here on the show.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, that's because like in the beginning I mentioned, what's the commonality, right? And for me, it has to do with consciousness, because after you strip away the surface layer stuff, which is still fascinating stuff, such as the actual physical UFO craft, the beings, and all the different conversations that we have, you get to the conscious aspect, and in my opinion, what is my personal relationship or your personal relationship or our relationship with the fabric of the continuum itself? That's really where, in my opinion, this goes. And if you're into the topic long enough, most people seem to be, end up in that same spot.
Very smart. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Is AI conscious? What is consciousness? Consciousness is coming up very strongly in the whole UAP field at the moment, making contact through consciousness. So yeah, you're spot on in identifying that thread.
Yeah, I mean, at the cuff, like I said in the beginning, when a friend of mine is like, "You've gone so far," like, no, well, okay, actually, I'll take that as a compliment. Yes, we have, but not in the way that they originally thought. They thought that we were so far off the path, as it were, I think. But I take that as our understanding of it has kind of come so far.
I love that, because this whole thing's evolving. So we're on that path, we're on that path of evolution and exploration.
Absolutely. So I forgot to say it in the beginning, but if you like these conversations, hit the like button, drop us a comment, subscribe, hit that bell, share it, and just help us kind of spread the word. And also other podcasters out there, if you're tuning in here, or creators, if anyone wants to take some snippets of conversations, the remix feature is on. You can do that. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it's on. If you want to reach out for the full file, I'll potentially send that to you as well, as long as you agree not to do any creative editing. But if you want to add your own commentary to it, or even cinematography on top of it, by all means, and monetize it, whatever. We don't care. But just wanted to put that out there as well.
Thanks for saying that, Mike, because what's really important here is the conversations, and that we move this discussion forward, this exploration, and that we're really working together. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be back at some point soon. And until then, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Much love to everyone out there.